Hi, gang. Okay, here's what we're going to do. We are going to finish class today talking about polling and polling questions. Now, the reason that polling is listed as one of the news criticisms is that a lot of times news organizations will present polls to us as news. Now, there are a few problems with that. A poll can be manipulated by the sample or how the question is written. And especially during an election year, polls don't tell us about issues necessarily. Polling data in the news perpetuates this idea that politics needs to be covered as a sport or a race rather than something where we actually talk about the issues. Let me explain a little what I mean. All right, so what makes a good poll sample? Have you ever been walking around the mall maybe and you accidentally make eye contact with someone holding a clipboard? Yeah, that's a slop sample. It's unreliable, right? Because the information that you get from people is only going to be from people who make eye contact with you and are willing to talk to you. They're only people who are at that particular mall on that particular day at that particular time. So think about it. If you were at a mall trying to get a sample of people, how would the sample be different on a Friday night compared to 6:30 on a Tuesday morning? Think of the different demographics. Who's in a mall on Friday night? Well, do teenagers even still go to malls? Not really, but you get the idea. You've got the old mall walkers who are there early in the morning, and then you'd have a completely different crowd there on a Friday night. So, and even so, you're only going to get people who are willing to talk to you. So, slop samples are not reliable. If, for example, MSNBC or Fox puts a poll on their website, that's also not really a very good sample because you're only dealing with people who are already on that website. So you're going to be hearing from people who are already on the MSNBC website or already on the Fox website. So you already know their ideological leanings. So if Fox was going to come out and say, 90% of the people on our online poll say this, well, 90% of the people that are on your website probably have very same philosophies about government. Okay, so it's not a random sample. Also, a call-in poll, like if you run a television station or a news station and you ask people to call in, well, you're only dealing with people who are actually listening to the radio station at that point or watching TV at that point. You're only going to be hearing from people who care enough to call. I mean, this isn't American Idol, right? Remember when people used to watch American Idol? I know. Um, you're only going to get people who care enough to call in. And you're only going to be hearing from people who actually hear your message to begin with. So also not a random sample. The problem with phone samples, like, a phone poll, like if your phone rings and someone says, do you have a few minutes to answer some questions? Who has landlines anymore? People over 40. People over 40 still have landlines. No one else does. So right then, you know that the sample isn't going to be random. You also know that you're only going to be dealing, with people who are willing to answer the phone and who are willing to spend time answering your questions. So if you are going to do a phone poll and you need 1,500 respondents, you're going to be on the phone for a month trying to get people to talk to you, trying to get people to answer the phone, right? Now, I always answer when pollsters call. Like I said, I kind of have, I make good sport out of them because typically I'll say, can you tell me who is paying for this poll to be done? Oh, well, I don't have that information, ma'am. Can you tell me who wrote these questions? Oh, I don't have that information, ma'am. And usually I say, I'll have that information within 3 questions. I'll be able to tell you who paid for this poll and who wrote the questions. And typically the pollster, bless their hearts, end up like curled under a desk after I'm done. After I'm done with them, because I end up asking them questions because the whole process fascinates me. Fascinates me. All right, so samples are really, really hard to get. That in itself is reason for polls to never be news. Oh my gosh, somebody on Twitter yesterday, I gotta find this. A majority of the quote was, it was an article from Ebony magazine, and see if anybody can find it. Overwhelming majority of whites believe that excessive police force is okay. And it sounded suspicious to me. So I went to the link and I swear it said 7 out of 10. Now, something happened and I couldn't continue reading. So I don't know if that was actually 7 people out of 10 people that they asked or if it was 70%. Even so, that's worth noting. It's worth noting. Okay. Now, what I want you to do is read these 2 questions. All right. These are my favorite polling question examples ever. This is from 1994. I know. I was in graduate school and I did a whole thing on Bosnia. And these questions were just perfect examples for polling. Look at the difference between the top and the bottom and just read them for a second. Okay. It's the same question, but which one got the yes response and which one got the no? Overwhelmingly, people said yes to the top question, and overwhelmingly, people said no to the bottom question. So let's look at that bottom question. What words in that question are connotative? Remember, not necessarily inflammatory, but what words in that bottom question have strong emotional attachments for us? Look, men and women. Deployed. Woo, that's a loaded word, because when we hear deployed, what do we see? We see toddlers at the airport hugging their mamas goodbye, right? Overseas, to fight. If you notice in the top question, we're just helping. Bottom question, we're fighting. It's the same issue, but depending on how you ask the question, changes everything. Changes everything. Here's one from last year that I absolutely love. All in all, would you rather have bigger government that provides more services or smaller government that provides fewer services? Kind of depends on the services, doesn't it? Roads, fire departments, right? Is this the most ridiculous question ever? How do you even answer that? Now, this is why polls bug me, because this is the kind of political coverage then that we get during an election year. And look for it because it's coming. The polling crap is coming, and I want that little internal BS detector to be on all the time. When you see something like this, I want that little alarm to go off and say, who did they ask and how did they word the questions? This was in fact, this question got a lot of news coverage when it came out during the 2012 election. Which presidential candidate would you rather have over for dinner? How the hell does that relate to anything? It doesn't. I mean, I might want to have one person over for dinner, but have another person in the White House. Isn't it weird? What does this have to do with how anybody would govern? Nothing. It just makes for an interesting little news story. So what we get then are all of these images and graphs and pretty pictures about who thinks what and who's winning and who's losing and what the tactics are, rather than any information about the actual election. So here are my main list of problems with polls. A lot of times, if the candidate that you favor is really far ahead or really behind, you won't vote because you don't think that there's a chance that your vote is going to make a difference, right? If somebody's ahead by 20%, are you going to bother voting? Maybe not. You might not think your vote is necessary. Same if your person is behind. It forces news organizations to focus on the race rather than the content of any election. And I think that a weak candidate will do polls through their own campaign and then cater their opinions based on what the polls say. It was very famous when Bill Clinton was president. They would take polling data on where people thought they should go on vacation. And if I had been their daughter Chelsea, I'd be like, could we please just go wherever we want and not worry what the polls say? But it's so easy to manipulate the results. That's why I don't think polls should be any part of news, because it all depends on who wrote the questions and who gets asked. Okay? Ta-da! Woo! We're done with class today. Let's give Tom Atwood another big hand for helping out. Thank you, Tom. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. Monday, here's what we're doing. We're doing advertising criticisms on Monday. If you are the least bit queasy or don't like to hear your teacher say weird words like erection, do not come to class on Monday. Monday's advertising criticisms. Next Wednesday, we're doing course evaluations, and we're going to review for exam number 4. Exam number 4 is not cumulative. It will be online, and it will be available after class next Wednesday, okay? You know how to reach me if you need to. Also, I'm very curious for you all to check the website younow.com, younow.com, younow.com. Go there. Tell me what you think on Monday, okay? All right. Miss you guys.